Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what to do, everybody. Like the stream. Comment below if you're watching it later. Subscribe, youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications. Say hello to Bradley Alsop.
The undefeated this past week.
You were
Bradley
undefeated.
Alsop.
You caught up to me. Oh, and I also forgot to say rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to or watching this. We are on ESVN OT, and that's when we give you our locks, or not so much our locks, but our very pickable locks. How about that?
Yeah, no guarantees, folks.
And no pun intended with the pickables.
The pickable picks.
Pickable picks, pickable lock picks. Shall we just jump right into
Dive
it?
in.
ESVN.
Stone Cold Lock of the Century. All week.
Those
Boom,
were
boom.
actually mine were actually the Stone Cold Locks of the Century of the week.
You actually were. Bradley went 3-0 last week. Let's pull this up here. Got to give him his due. I've gone 1-2 every single week so far. So we are both at 3-6. Slow starts. You know, just like the New York Giants. 3-6. We are. I went 1-2 last week. The Tampa Bay Bucks lost in spectacular fashion, just completely obliterating my faith in them. Being able to beat the Denver Broncos.
That was a weird outcome, broadly.
The San Francisco 49ers looked like they were on their way to covering the spread until they completely collapsed in the fourth quarter to the Rams. And then I won that Kansas City spread by 1.5. Bradley went 3-0. Pittsburgh -1.5. Boom. Philadelphia +2.5 in New Orleans. Boom.
It was a nail biter though when it was 3-0 going into
It
into
really
halftime.
was. It really was. And then Indianapolis -1.5 against Chicago. So let's just dive in this week because I'm doing it, folks.
Whoa.
Last week, I saw that 6.5 point underdog spread for the New York Giants in Cleveland. And I said, this makes very little sense based on what I've seen in terms of how Deshaun Watson is playing. The fact that the Giants were the better team against the Commanders and lost that game because of kicker issues. What's interesting is like the Giants. So for people that don't see this on the screen, I'm picking the Giants +3 tonight on Thursday, +5 tonight on Thursday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I'll give my reasoning for this, even though it makes me sweat. So, like, to even pick the Giants, because I have weird superstitions, and I have to assure myself, or Sam will tell me, by the way, that it's magical thinking. It is magical thinking. None of this is real. He says it mostly related to, like, how I decide not to make predictions about the election, because I feel like I'm jinxing it. I have no influence over the outcome. This is just my assessment of things. Okay, getting over that magical thinking. The Giants actually, I think, have some advantages in this situation. One, they're at home. Two, they are still smarting from the opening week loss to the Dallas Cowboys last year, where, a little aside about me, I was at a wedding that weekend, contracted COVID, was sick with COVID, traveling home in a torrential downpour on that Sunday, in a mask double masking the entire time because it was on an airplane coming down from Vermont. I was at a wedding, so had COVID. Our flight was delayed like 6 hours, missed all of football, but I was like, okay, at least on Sunday Night Football, I'll get to watch the New York Giants, who had just come off a playoff appearance and win against the Vikings, lost to the Eagles, but perhaps they were going to improve this year. It'd be really interesting. Torrential downpour. Giants lost 40-0 to the Cowboys on opening weekend last year. They have been talking about that loss for quite a while. It's been brought up in press conferences for the Giants throughout this week. And the Dallas Cowboys are coming off. It's a short week for them. They're going to be traveling to New York. And I just think 5 points at home for the Giants, given the state of both teams, the fact that they have identical records, is too much. The Giants have an emerging superstar in Malik Neighbors. The Giants have an offensive line that can protect a little bit better than they've been able to do in previous years. The Dallas Cowboys still have enormous problems, including they cannot stop the run. And Devin Singletary has been, when he doesn't fumble, has shown that he can run the ball. Daniel Jones can also run the ball. The Dallas Cowboys have secondary issues that aren't being discussed. Without Deron Bland, I think that their secondary has a lot of problems. Like the Giants secondary has talked a lot about having a lot of problems, and they will be without their starting nickel corner, Drew Phillips, and Adoree Jackson. So 2 key secondary players. They do get Nick McLeod back this week, but the Giants cornerback 2 question mark is a real thing in this game. But it's also a real thing for Dallas. Like, they've been struggling with their cornerback 2 since Bland went down. And so I just think it's too many points. And I felt this way last week. I think Mike Zimmer's defense is outdated and pretty easy to scout. And I just think the Giants have more motivation here. Like, there's a sense in Dallas that this is Mike McCarthy's, I don't know, swan song, or it's this like defunct year where they know they're not going anywhere. They didn't make any moves in the offseason. And I predicted that the Giants would finish with a better record than the Dallas Cowboys at the start of the year. And I think this is where things start to fall apart for them. So I'm going to take the Giants 21-20 in this game.
Well, I think it's, but I think a lot of what you're saying about the weaknesses in Dallas is also going to show that there may have been, you know, I know, and again, this is not going to shock anybody that I think this, but there just may have been honestly just some real, some level of arrogance with coming from Jerry Jones that, like, both in the roster construction, but also in how he's been handling the contracts. Like, oh, I can sort of like throw the money around to CD and Dak and Micah Parsons whenever I want, and I'll maintain the oxygen of the news cycle, especially, you know, with the right before kickoff of week 1, giving Dak the money that he was, you know, looking for. Combined with the fact that, as you said, outside of like Eric Kendricks at linebacker, you know, for the most part, they lost pieces. That was
also can't run the ball. And
yes, and the running back room is, to your point, Zeke and Rico Dowdle is not really inspiring a ton of confidence. I think Zeke probably looks a little bit more explosive than I anticipated, but that's a relatively low bar based on what we saw from him in Dallas, you know, much earlier in his career.
And fantasy experts are saying to drop him. So I think he's kind of falling off the depth chart to a certain degree at this point.
And, you know, the attrition on this team is real. They lost Tyron Smith to the Jets, lost Tyler Biadasz to the Commanders, lost Dorrance Armstrong on the defensive line to the Commanders. As you said, Jonathan Hankins now in Seattle. They're one of their more reliable run defenders, which again is not saying a ton because this run defense has been really, really middling and borderline, and in some respects really, really not effective in any way, especially relative to what you sort of expect from the so-called vaunted Cowboys defense. But as we've been talking about, the roster construction makes it so that they rely heavily on stars who make it with high variance outcomes like sacks, strip sacks, fumble recoveries, interceptions. When those don't come, there's not a lot to hold up.
Yep.
And the offense I think is still too is looking rather, you know, there aren't that many counters to the original, I think, set that Mike McCarthy puts out there. Once they kind of get through that, it's pretty boilerplate.
Yep.
And so I could see this being a bit of a steeper line. I'm curious to see how this game goes, but I definitely am more inclined to fade the Cowboys going forward until proven otherwise.
Yep.
Is the way I see it. I think a number of these lines, but this is where we'll start. I mean, you'll see it in some of my picks as well. I think these lines are a little too liberal in terms of where some underdogs are being placed by the odds makers here.
Well, so I almost picked Denver against the Jets plus 7.5. That half point was tantalizing to me, but I didn't pull the trigger because, as to your point, Bradley, heavy favorites of minus 5.5 or more have not done well this season. 2-14 so far, which is like a unheard of thing for books.
Interesting stat though to consider.
Interesting stat, forward. And I'm wondering when they correct. But I think it's in part because offenses have not been firing on all cylinders.
100%.
The pass has been defenses are just playing better than offenses right now.
And to your point, I think what we've been seeing, and I think a number of commentators that have pointed to this, is that because there has been such a run on kind of maximizing and prioritizing the idea of the explosive play in the offense, defensive coordinators are really wise to it now and are trying their hardest to not let those passing lanes stay open.
Exactly.
And to your point, that's leading to more rushing attempts, leading to more of the run game being emphasized, but it's not leading to more points yet.
And this is why, like, people just overreacting about the game in this regard, like that scoring's up. We've got to
as you're saying, it's down.
These things now, they have ebbs and flows, and defenses, right? Like the Chiefs are playing like a defense first game right now.
Totally.
After them dominating on offense for so many years, and it just goes to show like the coach is correct, and you don't need to be so heavy-handed about trying to shift the rules in certain ways. Like, this is how things go, and now we're in an era where the offensive trees, like the coaches that are getting hired, a lot of them are coming from Shanahan, and what are they? They're a run-first team. They're a zone-run team, and that's taking over the league right now.
Because even with the quarterback maintenance that a number of these guys from the Shanahan tree are very good at, as we've been seeing, with Bobby Slowick, with C.J. Stroud, Kevin O'Connell, with both Kirk Cousins prior to injury, and now Sam Darnold, and a number of these guys. While as we can see, some the pass becomes rather there are a lot of these coaches that are make quarterback friendly environments.
Yep.
But from Shanahan, as to your point, fundamentally, it's somewhat of a cliche. But Shanahan and his disciples very rarely ever want to have a team or an offensive structure where they are not able to establish the run.
Exactly.
And that was the difficulty for Houston last year.
Yep.
And of course, unfortunately, with Joe Mixon being injured, that's may be a difficulty until he's back. But the offense was so dynamic week one because of Joe Mixon kind of transform and the healthy offensive line transforming the running game, giving C.J. Stroud a little bit more latitude.
Yeah. Well, we went off on the side there. We've talked about the Giants in my pick enough. You're up, Bradley.
So I took the Vikings +3 against Green Bay because I guess I understand home field advantage. Their Packers are in Lambeau, but I just still feel like honestly the Vikings have been playing so well on both sides of the ball that I struggle to place them as underdogs in this context. Even
that's odd. I guess Jordan Love is going to play, but is he going to be 100%?
Right. I guess the question is, if Jordan Love is back, he's credit to him, and I hope obviously, knock on wood a million times, credit to him and the Packers training staff. He's been on a seemingly good path to recovery, and I'm if he does play and looks good, I'm thrilled that he has not been out for longer than we thought. Once he sustained that injury, but I just feel like the Vikings offense has been really clicking, and I think either when it comes to Jordan Love or Malik Willis, whoever's behind center there. We've seen so far Brian Flores has been really dialing up his best stuff and really kind of keying in on sort of stifling and baffling a few, baffling young quarterbacks. And Love is still a young quarterback, and maybe not as much in terms of his age because he's obviously been matriculating a lot when he was behind Aaron Rodgers. But this is only his second full year as a starter.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if Flores can kind of continue to do what he was able to do in these last few weeks, like he did against C.J. Stroud, like he did against Brock Purdy, to kind of confuse and sort of baffle Jordan Love a little bit. And this game will be closer than a 3-point win for the Packers.
I hear you on that. I think like it could come down to the wire, and at the very least, I feel like I would have at least made this a neutral site line of 2.5, right? Because I could see this going in the direction where like Green Bay wins by 3 and then you push even. I just feel like for an undefeated team in Green Bay to give a half point in it, like I don't know. The Vikings have been playing like one of the best teams in football all year. So I agree with you on this one. We're on opposite sides of this.
Oh, team. I love it. So
I'm taking the Bengals in Carolina -4.5. I just said I felt like the offense played phenomenally against the Commanders, and it was just like a complete takeover by Jaden Daniels, who, by the way, spoiler alert, I'm going to be selecting to be on the for my second pick to do well against the Arizona Cardinals. But like Yeah, I just feel like the Bengals need this more than the Carolina Panthers. I think that the Panthers kind of got it all out of their system. Their excitement about Andy Dalton coming into the fray and actually being able to run an NFL offense, unlike Bryce Young, they got that all out in the Las Vegas game. And I just feel like Cincinnati, if they want any chance, are going to have to win, and they're going to have to win by a lot. The thing that maybe is also working in your favor is that Trent Brown has a season-ending injury on the side of Cincinnati, a patellar tendon tear that's going to sideline him for the rest of the year. So Amarius Mims, who they'd been hoping as a rookie to kind of groom and make into a more polished pro, is going to be starting. So like the Panthers could be attacking him, but they lost their best player, Derek Brown. I just don't have faith that they're going to be able to get home consistently on Joe Burrow, whose release is phenomenal. And I think the Bengals win by a touchdown in Carolina.
And I like Mims a lot. I think he's one of those guys that honestly I think there was some perception of him that sort of equated him being raw with him not playing a lot. For someone who really did not play a lot due to injuries, he's very, very skilled. And he's skilled for being like an actual mountain of a man.
There were a few, there were a few tackles in this draft that just were really talented. I mean, both Joe Alt and J.C. Latham and Amarius Mims. I liked all.
Totally.
And then, Fosh looks good for the Jets.
This was I think
really good crop of tackles.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm excited. I obviously hate to see Trent Brown go out like that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited that at least Mims is going to get some chance to get some run there. The reason I'm mostly only picking this, and I agree with you.
Andy Dalton revenge game.
Yeah, right, exactly. Red Rifle revenge game. Let's go. No, I'm mostly picking this not necessarily for any bet on like the Panthers doing much to stifle the Bengals offense, because honestly, most of the indictment of the Bengals-Commanders game from Monday was not the Bengals offense. I mean, nobody
the defense looked horrible.
Nobody punted in that game. Meaning the Bengals were also mostly scoring at will as well. It was primarily the reason why I'm mostly giving something to the Panthers here is that this offense did look somewhat revitalized without Bryce Young behind center. And I'm pretty. This is the worst I think I've seen this Bengals defense in probably 4 years. I mean, that's
what I meant to say earlier about the Giants too as well. Sorry, like Shane Bowen was getting a ton of shit because he didn't blitz
the reticence to blitz, right?
Jaden Daniels at all during that game from Giants fans. Turns out that might have been the right strategy because Lou Anarumo was blitzing the hell out of him and he picked them apart. And
also the only person who was essentially having any success at getting home was Trey Hendrickson.
Yep.
And truly only him. I mean, there was
they have no other pass rusher.
Sam Hubbard wasn't getting pressure. Yeah. Miles Murphy has not been healthy, but even him, first round pick, has not been that effective since he's been drafted. Yeah. And the secondary doesn't look particularly exciting either. I mean, outside of Geno Stone, who I think is a good player who came over from Baltimore, we haven't seen a whole lot to really, I think, indicate that this defense is going to significantly improve. They've been getting gashed on the ground. I mean, they've been really getting lit up. And
Chuba Hubbard could definitely have a big day.
And Hubbard did look pretty good once. The combination of Hubbard, a obviously more steady hand with at quarterback with Dalton, and an offensive line that was, I think, already playing well. That was almost looking worse because Young was not performing particularly well. I actually think they're actually looking like a better unit, or at least a more cohesive unit on the ground, especially when you see some of these double teams that Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, and then even Ike Ekwonu in some of these run sets were getting after. I think there might be a little bit of an attitude shift here. But again, as you're saying, this would really hinge not on the Panthers offense versus Bengals defense. It's more Panthers defense versus Bengals offense.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that Lou Anarumo is going to be pissed off as well. We'll see. I think that the desperation factor is different, where it's like,
oh, they're 0-3. You're 100%.
I mean, and they're 0-3, but they're not dead in the sense that their division rival, the Baltimore Ravens, is 1-2.
Right.
And I know that the Steelers are undefeated, but the Bengals are going to see an opportunity there regardless. And the Browns look like shit. So.
And listen, this team started 1-5 last year.
Yeah, no pun intended about the Browns.
This team started 1-5 last year, or maybe was it 1-5 last year? Or the year before there was one.
I don't remember which year, but they started. They do this. They're 0-2 at the base minimum every year.
And that's the thing. It's I think for a few teams we can certainly sort of kind of put the nail in the coffin for an 0-3 start, but I think even Joe Burrow, like we've had a number of times where it almost seems like the low point of the season for the Bengals is almost like kind of we get there by like week 5 or 6 and things really turn around. So I think there's still a distinct possibility. And as you're saying, it's not as if the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns are all 3-0 or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. So we're on opposite sides of this, but it really could go either way. I just am anticipating the Bengals win by a touchdown. You have the Carolina Panthers covering at the very least. I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders in Arizona plus 3.5. This scares me a little bit. Again, I just want to say, like, I also was considering Bradley's pick of Buffalo plus 2.5 in Baltimore, which is that line means it's a coin flip game. And if I were to say, like, I don't think it should be a coin flip game because of how well the Bills have played in the first 3 weeks of the year versus how not well the Baltimore Ravens have played. I mean, we don't need to get into your pick right now, but I like that pick for the reason that the Buffalo Bills have been extremely clutch and the Ravens have been the opposite. They almost let that game slip away in Dallas. But I'm going with the Washington Commanders going across the country to play in a dome where, hey, where did Jaden Daniels play college before he transferred to LSU?
Arizona State.
Arizona State. I now want to look up where he's from, actually, Jaden Daniels. Where did he grow up? Well, he grew up in California.
Oh, so
he grew up in West Coast guy. He's a West Coast guy, but he did go to college at Arizona State. Going back to where he got his start in the college game, I just think that the Washington Commanders have been a juggernaut on offense, and it seems like that's not going to slow down for a while, maybe until week 9 or 10 once people catch up to Kingsbury's system. But like Kingsbury's looked good for the past 2 weeks, the offense that he's provided for Jaden Daniels, who's already the favorite for Rookie of the Year. I mean, he just had an incredible game. And they haven't punted since the fourth quarter of week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since that point, they've had 8 field goals. They've scored 5 touchdowns. I think that even though Jonathan Gannon is a good defensive coach, Kendall Roy proving us wrong, Jaden Daniels is just like on another level right now. I think he's going to win Rookie of the Year if he stays healthy over Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison Jr. But he's going to want to show off in Arizona. Like some really interesting quarterback matchups this week. Where it's like it's the Steelers at the Titans, right? If I'm not, am I?
Yeah, yes, I think. Hold on, I'll double check.
No. The Titans are at the Dolphins. The Steelers are playing somebody. Oh no, it's the Steelers and the Colts. That's what I wanted to say.
Oh, got it.
Because I was trying to think of raw quarterbacks that are facing off raw athletic quarterbacks. Like that's why I thought of Will
Fields
Levis.
And AR.
But it's Fields but Fields is playing better than AR. But like also, I see AR as like a prospect in that same way where it's like you just need to be a little bit more consistent with your mechanics throwing, but you have the arm, you have the talent, you can make a wow throw. Like
he has the wow. It's almost right. It's just like it's like the mechanics and like the little things more than the huge things.
And then this game is interesting. 2 very incredibly athletic quarterbacks, but who are premium passers as well.
Yep.
Who have both been coached by Cliff Kingsbury, facing off against one another.
That's so funny too. Thinking of Cliff returning to Arizona also.
And then the Buffalo game is the 2 greatest running quarterbacks in the league, like both top 5 quarterbacks and the 2 best runners in that category facing off against one another in teams that have both come up short against the Chiefs. So just some interesting matchups this week. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Washington Commanders to win outright. But at the very least, I think they'll cover 3.5 points. So I'm going with them in Arizona.
And the Cardinals, honestly, as much as I feel like I've been talking about how I like a lot of what I'm seeing, given the sum of the parts there, definitely still some concerns in terms of defensive personnel and on the offensive line. The Lions were kind of having a little bit of a field day against the offensive line of the Cardinals. And so I think there's a chance that those 2 weak points kind of both in both sides of the trenches can kind of give Washington a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I'm seeing some people like I on Pardon My Take, I had a guest on who was talking about the Shanahans and RG3 and things like that. Jaden Daniels is not RG3. Like the stuff that went on with RG3 in this organization with Dan Snyder favoring him and like the guy on Part of My Take, who was their latest guest? Now I'm feeling, and we're doing this again. They had, what's his name on? It's bothering me. Oh, they had Mike Silver. That's what I want to say. So they had Mike Silver on, and he was talking about how the Shanahans, like when they were down in Washington, they didn't want RG3, right? But they got him and they made it work. RG3 went down with an injury. Kirk Cousins came in and lit up the whole, ran the Shanahan system perfectly. They won the game. And that he was saying that RG3's father in the locker room was there yelling at Mike Shanahan saying, why didn't you do these plays for RG3? And that Dan Snyder came into the locker room and didn't acknowledge Kirk Cousins at all and just went to RG3 to say, don't worry, the job is yours, because they had such a close relationship, Snyder and RG3. And it was like Shanahan saying, no, this guy isn't it. We want to go with Kirk. We should trade high on RG3, and Dan Snyder refused to. And it was like this whole favoritism from the owner to RG3 over Kirk Cousins. Long story short, that's a long way to say is that new owner in Washington who probably won't engage in that. And two, I know Jaden Daniels was taken 7 overall and he can run, but he is not RG3. RG3 could not throw the ball the way Jaden Daniels does. Jaden Daniels is a phenomenal thrower of the football. It looks clean every single time. And he is just so clutch, such a so cool, calm, and collected all the time. Great leader, seemingly great person. You don't have to worry about that RG3 bullshit with him. He is a calm, cool. He has the stuff mentally and emotionally to be able to be a competitive NFL player.
And even obviously,
top 10 NFL QB at one point.
Even if you wanted to adjust the sliders a little bit closer to him, taking a few less kind of either sack or kind of big hits, just because he's ambitious and he likes to call his number and take risks, which honestly, it's because he wants to succeed, and it's also because he has a lot of faith in himself, which I don't think is a bad quality. It's more for just for smart quarterbacking and smart plays for his health. I think even if that could be dialed back even a little bit more, I even still think relative to his college play, we're already seeing him mitigate those plays a little bit more even at this point right now.
Yep.
And so all that is to say is I actually think, if anything, it's encouraging beyond the great throws, beyond the deep balls to Terry McLaurin, beyond kind of the highlight plays. It also, I think, goes to show that he's learning and he's incrementally making smarter choices. And even on the stuff on the intermediate throws and on the throws over the middle, which he wasn't as known for, he had a great throw over the middle to Luke McCaffrey in that game on Monday. And having the Terry McLaurin stuff to look forward to, that's stuff that that's kind of the higher end stuff that you kind of hope for in a draft, and that high of a draft pick. He's already sort of exhibiting that, and if he can kind of get those other tendencies that are under control, which he's already working on. It's not as if oh my god, it's already this massive problem. It's already kind of abating slightly relative to his time at LSU, and so the deep ball stuff is already there, to your point, which was not as apparent with RG3, and the athleticism, and when he
and the leadership. That's the
totally
thing that RG3. I mean, he's a pundit now, and he seems like a nice enough guy, but he was never a very good leader, and Jaden Daniels is. So, I've talked enough, though. Bradley, go. Why are you selecting Buffalo plus 2.5?
Similar thing, just because I definitely, even though this is in Baltimore, and definitely the way that these two teams have played, I would not have expected necessarily a 2.5. 2.5 underdog line for the Bills, just because I feel like the Bills, similar to the Vikings, I just feel like the Bills have been playing pretty excellent football.
Well, the Bills are undefeated, and the Baltimore Ravens are 1-2, so it seems a little odd.
Yeah,
to have
a little
a
befuddling to me. Yeah, besides, as we were talking about before the show, the home field advantage and kind of making this sort of interpreting this plus 2.5 as kind of a pick 'em at any rate. However, I just think with the way Josh Allen has been playing, me and you both agree. I think so far it's still early in the season yet, but he's really kind of playing at an MVP track already.
Yep. I hope this is finally the year for him.
Totally. This Joe Brady offense is obviously still a lot on Josh's shoulders, but I think the James Cook element in the run game is just looking more and more like an actual option that can kind of give something over to the run game that wasn't really available to them prior. And I do think some of these pass sets are actually looking. The creation of these windows for Josh, I think, has already been looking good with Keon Coleman.
Joe
with
Brady
Khalil
is already
Shakir.
an improvement over Ken Dorsey.
Totally, and the thing is, Dorsey. I think what's interesting is Dorsey had, by some metrics, they were still a good offensive team, but I think they were still a good offensive team by still putting a ton on Josh's plate at the expense of like not having really many other options. I think already with how James Cook is looking in this run game, and even when Ray Davis gets some secondary touches, he had a touchdown against Jacksonville on Monday. There just seem to be more options, which gives Josh more room to flourish.
Yeah.
And with the Ravens, I think there are a number of concerns. I think we're still not seeing enough explosiveness out of these receivers to kind of offset what Lamar needs to do both in the air and on the ground. I still think there are some real concerns with the offensive line, and without Mike McDonald, I don't know if the defense is as dynamic as it was last season when it was a really good unit. So I haven't seen enough, I think, from the Ravens to think, oh, just because they're home, they're going to beat the Bills. The Bills, to me, already are kind of putting themselves in a different category through 4 weeks. So that's why I'm probably still, until further notice, kind of how I feel with the Vikings too. Like, until further notice, I'm probably going to lean towards teams like that as opposed to like, oh, just because they're away, meaning they're going to have a significant disadvantage.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think I like your picks, except for Carolina. I like both the Vikings one and the Buffalo one a lot. I'm going with the Giants +5 tonight on Thursday Night Football. God help me. The Cincinnati Bengals -4.5 in Carolina. The Washington Commanders +3.5 in Arizona. The Bradley's going with the Vikings +3 in Green Bay. The opposite of me, Carolina +4.5 at home against Cincinnati. And then the Buffalo Bills in Baltimore, a phenomenal Sunday Night Football matchup on NBC, +2.5. Gosh, we love football season. We will see you on Monday. We'll see how we did. Bye-bye.
Bye. Enjoy the games.